Here are the 3 steps to silencing the voice in your head. What's her name again? Oh, what's it? It begins with an S. Oh, it's S. Sarah, Sue. Oh, fuck, she's coming. Oh, no. Right, let's just pretend we know her name and not use it. You may or may not have noticed that there is a voice in your head constantly chatting, rabbiting on, rattling on in every single moment of your life. For me, when I was, writing down the script for this video, before I put the word on the page, I would say the word in my mind before it went down. That's a good way to recognise it. Or when you're reading, you'll have noticed that you repeat everything that you're reading in your mind as you're reading it. Sometimes the voice says very helpful things like, oh, we need to phone Pat and John. Oh, you should do the dishes right now. Oh, maybe it's a good time to go for a coffee break. But a lot of the time it sounds like some sort of evil, deranged Hannibal Lecter type villain from a children's cartoon. And it will say stuff like, what if you just pushed them over the edge of that cliff? Or what if you just jumped on the fucking top of that car? You're an idiot, destined for failure. How could you ever think that someone like that would fancy you? And most of the time it takes up both sides of the conversation, Oh, I should really phone my mum. Oh, it's 8 o'clock though, isn't it? Yeah, it's probably a bit late. Maybe we should phone her tomorrow. Maybe let's set a wee alarm to remind myself to phone my mum tomorrow. Okay, let's do that. Good chatting to you. Yeah, you too. Bye. And every single person in the world is walking around with this voice in their head, talking constantly. And if we saw someone on the street walking along saying out loud the things that we were all saying in our mind, you would think they were a deranged psychopath or schizophrenic, and you would give them a wide berth. But the reality is that every single person in the world is doing this all the time. It just happens to be in their head, not out of their mouth. Do you know the voice I'm talking about? Get the voice to say chocolate in your head right now. Now get it to say, Arsenal are going to win the league. Did you notice it? Did you hear it? That's the voice. That's the voice in your head that's been ruining your life for the last 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. Another way to look at this voice is to think of this as your thoughts, or your mind, or your voice. Whichever way helps this kind of concept work its way into your brain a bit easier. And the number one most important way to silence the voice in your mind is to recognise that you are not the voice. Is to become the observer of this voice in your mind. Because most of us think we are the voice. Speaking from personal experience here. And when you think you are the voice, when the voice takes some particularly deranged avenues in its mind in your mental chatter, you think that's you, and therefore you start judging yourself as a bad person because of the things that are happening in your mind with this voice. But if you just did the exercise before, where you were saying, Arsenal, chocolate, then you would have recognised that you could notice the voice saying something. So if you noticed the voice saying it, then you are not the voice. You are the observer of the voice. And therefore the voice can say whatever the fuck it wants, because it's not you. So whatever it says is water off a duck's back. You're not going to grab these things and make them part of your personality, because the voice is there and you're here. And that is the start of true freedom. Number 2 of how to silence the voice in your mind is to recognise that the majority of this incessant chatter that we have going on in our minds is completely useless. Very few of our problems exist with the raw details of the thing that happened in the real world. Most of our problems are created in our mind by the voice, by our thoughts, in response to something that happened in the real world. But the reality is, most of life is going to unfold with forces out with your control in whatever way it's going to unfold. Therefore, whatever the voice says, whatever you think about the things happening is irrelevant. You'll have noticed this before, like maybe you had a client and you submitted some work and you didn't hear from them for 2 days, and you spent 2 days in your head, making up this illusion fantasy of the fact that the client hates you, hates your work, is going to fire you, and then you're going to be out on the street homeless because you've got no money. And then 2 days later the client comes back and says, oh, sorry about that, I was busy with the family. Great work, by the way. And you realise you just spent 2 days of your life fucking wasted on worrying about this thing, which was complete illusion. So most of the things that the voice says are completely irrelevant. Which begs the question, well, what the fuck is the point in it then? And the best way to understand this is because the voice is there to help us control the external world in our own little way. You know, the big world is real, raw, scary. It's the unknown every single day of your life. The reality is tomorrow is a complete construct. You have no idea what's going to happen. You could get the worst news in the world in 2 hours. And just because you had this idea of, today I'm going to meditate in the afternoon, then I'm going to do this and going to do that, it's completely irrelevant. And so the voice is our attempt to control all this raw, terrifying information from the external world and to bring it into our mind. Like when we're looking at a tree or a bird, we say in our heads, oh, look at that wee bird. Oh, it's yellow. I like yellow birds. Do you like yellow? Ah, yellow's one of my favourite colours. The reason we do this is because by bringing it into our mind, and talking about the bird in our mind, we are able to judge, label, and categorize information that's coming to us, and therefore it feels like we have our own ownership of it. It feels like we have it under control, and we feel like we can relax. And the reality is that because the real world is too real and raw for most people, and because it is the unknown in every single minute of every day, which is a lot for people to handle, the vast majority decide to recreate the world in their little mind illusionary palace, and instead of living out here in the real world, they spend their entire days living up here in their mind, in their thoughts about what is happening rather than what is actually happening. And number 3, the final tip in order to try and silence this voice in the mind, is to go on the journey of trying to figure out what the voice is, who it is in your own mind, and also most importantly, who the observer of the voice is, because that's the real you. And the way out of your mind, the way to silence this voice, is to consistently, constantly remind yourself that you are the observer of the voice. You are not the voice. And this is going to be difficult because if you've spent 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years as the voice, as your thoughts, as your mind, then to try and create a gap in there is going to require constant attention. So you can do this however you want. You know, some people set an alarm on their phone every 30 minutes to remind them to become the observer of their thoughts rather than their thoughts. And by doing that, you start to discover the real you, the observer, because the real you is the one that is completely silent. It's the one that sits behind all your thoughts. It's the one that immerses in the world and responds perfectly without any sort of preordained idea of, I'll do this. It's the one that speaks from complete knowledge and wisdom and confidence. It's the one that operates in the world flawlessly. And the journey of spirituality is the journey of understanding who the observer really is and who you really are. And that journey begins by paying attention to your thoughts or the voice or your mind and recognizing that you are not it. Because with that, inevitably will beg the question, well, if I'm not it, then what the fuck am I then? And when you're there, that's when the journey really starts.